Aigun Raf, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe te māngai o te whare o te rā, tēnā tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about four things. I want to talk about the community and voluntary sector, charitable organisations. I want to talk about a couple of the submissions that were made to the Select Committee. I wasn't on that Select Committee for this bill, but I've read through those submissions. I want to reference one of those submissions to another bill before this House, and I want to talk about Clause 13 that has been struck out, altering Section 61 of the Principal Act. So, sir, across our country, charitable organisations play a very important role in society. The community and voluntary sector is one that the government should be supporting. And we've noted and noticed from feedback from the community and voluntary sector and from charitable organisations that they're feeling really quite unsupported, really. And I think through this bill, there's a potential for them to feel even more unsupported. And I'll get to that later. But I want to talk about submission, and one in particular that has been made by Te Korowai o Ngā Ruahine Trust. This trust is a post-settlement governance entity for the settlement of the Ngā Ruahine iwi. Their bill is before the House right now, awaiting third reading. So I want to talk about this not only because it's in my electorate, but I think it's also the House needs to be reminded that participation by iwi, post-settlement governance entities, is a really important part of our democratic system, because these are the people, these are the organisations that have been mandated by their iwi to represent their people's interests in Aotearoa. So they have a mandate, and their I took particular note of their submission on this bill. I want to talk further about their settlement, though, because within every single settlement, and I want to remind the House of this, is that the Crown acknowledges breaches of the treaty. And then it goes on to apologise for those breaches. My point related to this bill, sir, is that when the Parliament, when the Crown reaches an agreement with settlement groups, with iwi, it's really important that we don't go and pass legislation that impacts on them. Because what's the point of making an acknowledgement? What's the point of making an apology and then putting up some legislation that potentially hurts them? Yeah. So that is the why I'm talking about this particular group and their ability now to engage at this level, even though their settlement hasn't yet gone through. I want to acknowledge all of the submitters, including this one. So, I come to Clause 13, which has been amended and basically taken out because it was to amend Section 61 of the Principal Act. And a very small alteration, but the Select Committee, as I understand it, heard new information about the impact of making that change. And so it was removed. Now, remembering that this bill originated from the Statutes Amendment Bill that is before Parliament. And if only one member objects to any part of that statutory amendment bill, then that can't pass. So this part of that bill was separated out into its own bill. I want to make the point and reference back to what I've already said, that it would not be appropriate once this change has been made by the Select Committee for it to actually come back as an SOP. And that's what my main point around all of this. I want to say to the House that would be inappropriate, in my opinion. Sir, this is a very short piece of legislation. There is not a lot in it, so those 4 points that I wanted to make, and to acknowledge the charitable organisations and the work that they do in Aotearoa. I want to acknowledge those submissions, in particular the one from Te Korowai o Ngā Ruahine Trust. I want to reference it back to their legislation and the acknowledgements of the breaches of the treaty to them and the apology that they will receive through that legislation. And I object to any future inclusion of Clause 13 of this bill. Nō reira, e te maangai o te whare, tēnā tātou.